So, Sri Akal, my name's Amma. On today's episode, I'm going to be talking about my experience of skydiving, the emotions that I had before, during, and after, and some of the insights that I've had. If you've clicked onto this video because you're set to go skydiving and you're terrified, you've come to the right place because as someone who wasn't only terrified of skydiving, but also terrified of heights, just the thought of throwing myself out of a plane would make me physically sick. I'm the right person to tell you that if I can do it, so can you. If you want to see the actual footage of me throwing myself out of a plane, head over to my TikTok account, which is @AmmaBrownGirl. To begin with, the whole reason that I decided to skydive wasn't exactly because it was my own choice. It was my girlfriend's birthday last year, and I was like, okay, what do you want to do for your birthday? Anything that you want, because I love you so much, I'll be willing to do pretty much anything. So out of anything, she obviously decided to go for skydiving rather than picking a nice dinner or a party, or we could go out somewhere and do an activity. But I wasn't thinking skydiving as like the first pick that she'd go for. So anyway, she's roped me in. I'm gagging at the thought that what have I put myself into, especially as someone who never saw themselves skydiving. The thought of it never brought me any joy, let alone considering actually doing it. So after going back and forth, we've hit the pay now button and that's it. The skydive is booked. In terms of costing, I paid £200, and in location, it was near Doddington, which is like up north in the UK. So it was quite far from London, and the company itself is called North London Skydiving, who are absolutely excellent at what they do, and the instructors are phenomenal. And I'm sure you might be wondering as to why did I book this a year ago and spend a year before I actually jumped. In actuality, that wasn't the case because we had booked the skydive a month after we had booked it originally. However, on the day when we went, the weather was awful. It was snowing of that morning. The first group had already gone to jump and they were saying how the weather conditions up there were awful because on ground, if you imagine, it's -1, but up there, you're looking at around -15, -12. So it's very cold, very icy. You're not going to enjoy it as much, especially going through the clouds because it's going to be all icy and it's going to be hitting your face. So it's not going to be as enjoyable as if you were doing it in the summer. So when the instructor came down from the first jump, he was like, oh, sorry, we're going to have to cancel your jump. And in that moment, I knew I wasn't meant to jump. Firstly, relieved that I don't need to because I was already shitting myself. And secondly, I had already put on all the gear, all the harnesses, everything. We were just about to go. And I just thought, okay, it's not meant to happen. Thank God. I didn't really want to do it anyway. I was really forcing myself to do it. So here we are. So fast forward to about a year later, I told my girlfriend that if you're going to rebook it, and whenever you rebook it, do not tell me. I don't want to know about it. I don't want to hear about it. Just let me know closer to the time so that I can book it off work. And that is that. The thought of it was enough to make me feel sick. So again, if you feel in doubt that I wasn't maybe that scared or, oh, I was fine, trust me when I say I was petrified. One thing I would really recommend to help is indoor skydiving. I told my girlfriend that if you're going to force me to jump out of a plane, you better book me indoor skydiving because it's close enough for you to feel the feeling of like the position that you're going to be in, as well as like the weightlessness. The free fall element is not the same, to be clear, but it's better to be as close as possible to the feeling without having to jump out of the plane just there and then. So for me, going indoor skydiving about a week before was really helpful because there was still a level of adrenaline going and I was excited for it. And as soon as I got into the wind tunnel, it was a little bit nerve-wracking, but I was still like, okay, I'm here, I'm enjoying this. And I was smiling and my spit was just going up because I was like smiling ear to ear and I was really happy. But at the same time, it was like, okay, I've done this, but I'm also going to be jumping out of a plane next week. So fast forward to the bit you really want to hear about, which is the day of. It was me, my friend Abigail, and my girlfriend. So what I did to help my nerves calm down a little bit was try to enjoy the journey as much as I could. So we were listening to Sexy Red, we were just vibing, we were all singing. It was a really good drive because we saw the sun coming up and it was clear roads, clear skies. And I was like, okay, at least we're not jumping in -12 conditions and it's not going to be ice in my face. So when you arrive at your skydive, you have to be there at a certain time and you line up and then you get called in one by one where you sign your life away, you click your name on the screen and they bring you into this room. They ask you what kind of videography or photography you want for your skydive. Some people chose not to have anything and some people decided to have both. Some people just wanted a video and they do vary in prices, but I decided to go for the second package, which was the actual fall from the plane as well as the landing. And that cost £139 as well as the GoPro footage, which all totaled to about 170 pounds. So on the day, I spent around a good 370, 380. So quite a lot of money. But again, this is very much a once in a lifetime experience. We were in the group that jumped second to last, so there was quite a substantial wait. We got there at about 7:30 in the morning and they gave us all our training, but we jumped at around 11:45, so quite a lot of a wait where they had like a cafe. It was just a lot of waiting, which is quite common in most skydiving places. The nerves didn't hit me until I had to put the gear on. At that point, I was like, nah. Sod this. I changed my mind. I don't want to do it. I was kind of having a mini panic attack, but also just trying to keep my shit together. But I was clearly quite nervous. I could feel the blood draining from my face and my soul, and I was going quite numb. Luckily, as I said at the start of this episode, that the instructors were phenomenal. One of the guys, I can't remember his name, but he was so lovely and he was just like, oh, it's fine. I do this every day. You're going to be fine. Trust me, you're going to enjoy it. It's just the anticipation. You've got this. Don't worry. And I was like, yeah, it's easy for you to say that because you do this 1,000 times. But nonetheless, he was still able to somewhat reassure me and calm me down and help me get my gear on and just be like, it's fine. You've done the hardest bit. And I was like, yeah, I got this. I think, I hope, I better. I got this. So now me, my girlfriend and my friend, we're all geared up, about to go onto the plane. And at this point, my mind is empty. I'm not thinking of anything. I'm not necessarily freaking out, but almost just in denial, as well as I can't believe I agree to this and I wish I could turn back now. My friend was the third to jump, my girlfriend was second, and I was first, which meant that I'd have to go onto the plane last. I was sitting right at the front, on top of my instructor, Chris, who is 90% of the reason why I was able to feel so calm. And I remember just feeling nothing. It was almost an eerie silence, but I was also aware of what I had signed myself up to. And the whole time I was just like to Chris, am I going to be okay? Chris, am I going to make it alive? Chris, are we going to be okay? How does the parachute work? And he was just like, Amma, I got you. Don't worry. All I need you to do is keep your posture straight and believe me when I say you're going to enjoy this and allow yourself to just feel. When it comes to skydiving, it's very important that you self-reflect and understand why you are doing that skydive for yourself. What is it that you want to learn? What is it that you want to feel? How do you want to feel afterwards? How do you want to feel before? Is there anything you are trying to work through? Make that skydive about yourself and understand what you want to have out of it. And in that moment, I realized that I just want to allow myself to feel. And it might sound cliche, but for a very long time throughout this year, I've been very stressed, feeling anxious. There are times where I'm too busy to feel things, but when you're on a plane, 10,000 feet high in the sky, you have all the time in the world to feel your feelings, especially in a position like that, because you're going to have so many things racing through your head in terms of fear, excitement, adrenaline, and all the times where I've been burnt out and I felt like I couldn't feel, this was the one time I had to allow myself to feel. And if in that moment I was terrified or if I was scared or nervous, that is the emotion I want to feel because I don't allow myself to feel that. After watching hundreds of skydiving videos, a lot of people would say that you'd feel the stomach drop feeling or you wouldn't feel the stomach drop feeling, or you'd have 10 seconds of fear and then it feels good. But for me, in my personal skydiving experience, as soon as I was on the edge of that door, a part of me knew what was going to happen. I had accepted my fate. And as soon as I dropped, it literally took my breath away. It was the best moment of my life. Many people decide not to open their mouth during skydiving because it dries your mouth out and you can't even hear yourself because of the wind. But for me, I was shouting from the depths of my soul, and it wasn't like a I'm scared kind of shout. It was more of a I'm releasing something that was holding me back and I'm releasing all this pain. It was almost like an exorcism. It took me just being thrown out of a plane to realize how much fear can take over the mind. That fear is something that limits you. And once you get over that fear and you do something that you was fearful of doing, you feel invincible. I didn't feel the stomach drop feeling. I thoroughly enjoyed my free fall. The one thing I would say is that I wish I was falling for longer, that I literally touched a cloud. I felt the cloud on my skin and it was cold, but also surreal. And the entirety of the earth just looked like Google Maps. And as soon as the parachute opened, Chris was just talking to me and he was just like, well done, you did it. And I was still shouting, having my exorcism, but I was like, wait, am I allowed to shout? And he was like, of course you can shout. So I just continued shouting a lot more and just releasing all of that negative energy that I really needed to get out of me. And I say this hand on heart as someone who was absolutely petrified of jumping out of the sky. Please skydive before you die. It will change your life, the way you think, your perspective on everything changes. Now, I hope I've been able to explain my skydiving experience in terms of the before, during, and after in depth. But what's really also important that I want to highlight is the aftermath and the self-reflection that I did. I just remember the absolute joy and adrenaline that I felt when I touched the ground, and no part of me felt, oh my God, I can't wait to touch the ground, or that I'm scared. Even whilst I was gliding through the sky, I thoroughly enjoyed every single second of it. And if I had the chance to go on that plane again tomorrow, I would. If anything, my biggest dream and goal, which I will achieve at some point, is to skydive in Dubai across the Palm. And from what I've heard, it is a very expensive experience, around $700 or $800. I'm not too sure. But again, experiences like that do take your breath away, and it is worth every single penny. The three things that I've been able to reflect on over the last week that I've applied to my personal life in terms of my circumstances, the positive and negative emotions I go through, some of the hardships, and just general life have been easier to process because I've jumped out of a plane. When your brain reaches that level of fear, there's no coming back from it, especially when you've been able to get over it. So after we'd jumped out of a plane, of course, everyone's going to be excited and they want to call their family and friends and be like, oh my God, I've just jumped out of a plane, because it's amazing to want to share that. And sadly, in that moment, I felt really lonely, because here I'm seeing my girlfriend and friend call their family members. And I was like, who do I call? I wish I could call my mum and tell her that I've just jumped out of a plane. But she also might not be able to give me the reaction and validation that I was truly seeking, in the sense that I want my mum to say, I'm so proud of you, well done, that this sounds great. And even after a week passing, and I know she knows I've jumped out of a plane, she's not messaged me to be like, oh my God, well done, this is a big deal. And why that is, I'm not too sure. We don't really speak that often anyways, but it really was quite disheartening to feel like I can't call either one of my parents and have the validation that I really wanted. And it sucks, because I say validation and that's something that I shouldn't want. But I think deep down, in times like that, especially throwing yourself out of a plane and it being such a huge achievement, a part of me did want my parents to be proud. And for the fact that I felt like I couldn't call them to tell them that, hey, I've jumped out of a plane, can you validate me, or can you tell me well done, or say that you're proud of me, knowing that I would never get that was very disheartening. But what I've been able to take from that is to remind myself that even though I understand my parents on a deeper level as to why they are the way they are, sometimes for the sake of my peace and boundaries, it is best to take them at face value. Just because I see the bigger picture, it isn't an excuse to think they are something that they're clearly not, because their actions and their words say something else. And approaching them like this helps my nervous system calm down a lot more, because I can just face them at face value and expect nothing. Another thing that jumping out of a plane has taught me is to not take life so seriously. And I think that's especially applied to my job, because at times I take things so personally at work because I genuinely care. And sometimes I do enjoy the work that I do. But thinking like that has got me into places that I don't really want to be in. So removing the emotion out of it and understanding that tomorrow, if anything happened to me, I'd be replaced in a heartbeat, that it's just not the end of the world, that it's okay. I can go in and do my job well. So I just have to remind myself to just separate my emotions, and it's just never that deep. And lastly, the third thing it's taught me is to feel my feelings. As I was saying before, I really struggle feeling my feelings because I'm usually too busy to feel my feelings. And that is obviously an excuse. But sometimes with life being so up and down and all these things you want to achieve, and you've got work going on and you want to see your friends and family, it does take a mental toll on you, not only mentally, but physically as well, in terms of you not even physically being able to take the time out for yourself to sit and journal and think and just take that time out for yourself. And for me, there was no better way to throw myself out of a plane and force myself to feel all those feelings at one go. And suddenly, all the things that I was worrying about no longer feel so big to me, because I know I'm going to be fine. I was able to survive plummeting down to the earth. I can survive anything. I'm not only going to be fine, I'm going to be more than fine, abundant, and life is going to be great. Even with my experience of skydiving, I'd encourage everyone, and even you listening, to reflect on yourself. See if there's anything you want to achieve that you think you've been holding back on, and see how you can overcome that. By challenging yourself and allowing yourself to feel those feelings, it's going to help you understand yourself better. I must say now that I have jumped out of a plane that things just don't feel as scary, that I'm already planning like the next things I want to do. I think bungee jumping is something I will do. It's definitely not in my top 3. I can't fathom how you throw yourself off something and you're tied to literally like an elastic band. And I think the shock that it has on your body must be quite forceful. So it is a little bit of like a health concern, if anything, because I'm not trying to snap anything or break anything. But at the same time, I'm like, okay, you only live once, YOLO. But at the same time, I'm like, I would like to do that at some point. Not too sure when, but I could definitely throw myself off a building or a crane or whatever it is. The one thing I would want to do, and I'm probably going to do, is those pendulum swings where you literally sit at the top of like a mountain and then it just drops and you swing back to back. And it even blows my mind that I'm saying this, and I'm saying this on camera, because I promise you, when I say I never saw myself as an adrenaline junkie, 24 years later, I have to admit I do quite like a bit of adrenaline. I like the feeling of feeling that I'm feeling something, because feeling something is good, especially when I went such a long time not feeling anything. And not to make this an ad, but slightly an ad, that if you have ever considered skydiving, or you want to skydive but you're terrified of heights, or you're petrified of the thought of the drop itself, please just do it. I truly think there is no way to describe the free fall feeling, because it's so different for everyone in terms of some people feel the drop, some people don't, some people feel like they're falling. I felt like I was flying and floating at the same time. So it's very different for everyone. But challenging yourself on that level takes a lot of courage. If I can do it, so can you. And at the point you've done something to challenge your fears, you can apply it to your life and understand that you are capable of anything you put your mind to. You just have to put yourself in a position to challenge your fears. Sadly, this brings me to the end of my episode. If you are watching, you can see that I've got a full face of makeup on, which is very rare for me to do on my podcast, because I usually just have like my typical lashes, brows, bit of gloss, and we're good to go. But today I have a bit of exciting news. I am going on to someone else's podcast as a guest to talk about my story, why I do my podcast, and it's going to be an opportunity for me to put myself out there. And I love collaborating, so we'll see how it goes. Once it's out, of course, I'll share it on my platform. Let me know what you guys think of that episode in terms of the collaboration, as well as this episode, or any other future topics you'd like me to discuss. Let me know if skydiving is something that you would ever consider doing. But that brings me to a wrap for this episode. I thank you for watching. I thank you for listening. Thank you. Dhanyavad. Sat Shri Akal. Bye.